Welcome back, csc200 class, to part 3 of our ex11, and this is our SpongeBob input exercise. And what we're going to do is whatever we input into our form is going to display on our display page using the magic of PHP. Now we're going to work on our display.php page because we already finished doing everything we need to so far in our index.html page. So that's working okay. So I could leave that open or I could close it, but I'm going to open up in my ex11 folder display.php. Now we're going to do some PHP in here, and we're also going to do a little bit of CSS. But remember from our previous exercise, we had to do stuff with PHP. We had to use like an echo statement and concatenation dots and make TR tags and things like that to show up in a table, and we're going to do that here as well. It won't be quite as bad. But what we're going to do first is there's a little PHP section up here, and we're going to make some variables. And what we're going to do is we're going to make PHP variables which typically have a $ in front of them. So for example, I'm going to do a $, and I'm going to say first. And then after that, I'm going to do a $, it's indenting here, but I'm going to do a $, last. And I'll go back and do $, species, and I'll do $, gender, because that's all we need right now. Now these are variables in PHP, just like you could do variables in any programming language, and that means you're going to assign them a value. So I'm going to say equals, and I could say equals, and you don't have to do it in this order. You could do one at a time. And what it's going to equal, now you might say, well, it's going to get the information from our index page, and you're not sure what that's going to be. Now I'm going to go back here. Now this is our HTML forms. Now we have to talk about PHP, so I'm going to go to PHP now, and I'm going to go down to forms handling. And we don't have to know a whole lot right now, but they have some basic stuff here. And here's form action, PHP, method equals post. And here's something here, this thing. If you can see, this is how it gets the information from the form. It's using this post. It's kind of almost like a function. It's like a method. It's using this post method, and you can guess that's why they call it method equals post. This is the post method. If you're using method equals get, it would use the get method. You can see the $ get. So we're going to use the post method. We're going to use this thing. So I'm actually going to highlight this. I could highlight that whole thing there. Now you can type it too. It's not a big deal. So I'm going to go here, and I'm just going to paste this. And I'm going to say post equals name, except I don't want it name, I want it to be first, because that's what we're using. And you could leave the semicolon at the end here. After each variable, you can do that. So after you do one, you could basically copy that and paste these, and they will all say post, because they're all using the post method, but it's getting the information from last, and then it's getting the information from species, and then it's getting the information from gender. And make sure they're lowercase. That's why we're doing everything lowercase. So these are variables. And what that means is we can use these variables in our code so that we don't have to use this whole longer thing here. So this will be shorter to use. So we can put this in our HTML code when we make our table. So I'm not going to mess with any CSS. We're going to go in here. Now here's more PHP code. And if you remember, when we make stuff print out, and I could go here and look at this, we use echo. Remember, we use echo. Now, this is just kind of all in one line here, but we're going to echo HTML code. And typically, we have to put that stuff in quotes when we do that. So I'm going to go back here, and in my code here, after the opening PHP tag in our table, because we have a table here, I'm going to say echo, and I'm going to hit a return, and I'll put things on their own line. And remember, since it's inside an echo statement, we have to put things in quotes. So I'm going to put a TR tag, and it's an HTML tag, so you need the brackets. And I'm going to put TR, and that means it's a row. And then I'm going to do a space dot space and hit return. And then here I'm going to put a TD. So I'll put an opening TD, and then I'm going to do space dot space, and I'm going to put the variable. So this one is going to be first. So I'm going to use the variable name, so I don't have to use all this stuff. And this is going to go here because it's in the cell. And then I'm going to do space dot space, and I'm going to close this up. So I can copy this and paste this here and put the, Remember, you have to put the closing slash in there. So make sure you put the /. That closes the cell. And then I'm going to put another dot because we're going to continue, because we're going to have 3 cells. So I'm just going to copy this whole thing now and paste it and paste it. And then all we have to change is the variable name. So this will be last, and it still has the $. And then if you go in here, I think if you just put the $, and you type like S, see, it brings up species. So it knows that there's a variable up there named species. So you can put that in. And then we're going to do one more, and that's going to be gender. And then if I do a $G, it'll bring up gender. So that's all I need, except I need the closing TR. I need to close this row. So I'm going to go down here, and I could even use this thing and copy it and put it here and paste it. Now, I have to put the / to close that tag, because this is all one row. And then I don't need any extra space here, so I could bring that up. And then remember, to close off my echo statement, what do you need? You need a semicolon. So make sure you put your semicolon there after all of this. So basically, these little dots here connect everything. Now, in a video from last year, I used echo statements for every single one. But it's actually easier just to use these connect statements. Then you only need 1 echo statement. We're going to use 2 echo statements, but this is our first one. We want to make sure this works first. But then we're actually going to put a heading above it so it looks a little bit nicer. But let's see if this works so far. So let's double check what we have. We have our variables, and they're using the post method to get these values from the name. And they're getting them from our index page, or here's our index page. They're getting them from name. So wherever name is, it's using these values. That's why there's gender under name. So it's using those values. So it's getting that. So that's where it's getting these variables represent getting the post method from whatever anybody types in there. And then it should echo this out on the page in a table with a row and 4 cells. So let's see what happens. Let's check this out. So I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to go back. You can hit the back button. And I'll put like Steve Swordfish, since we're doing SpongeBob stuff. Well, Steve Swordfish, and he's a swordfish, and he's male. And then I'm going to hit submit. Now, I'm not sure if I had to refresh this or not, so let's see what happens. And nothing happened. I think it's because I didn't refresh it. Let me go back, and let me refresh this. And now let me try it again. I'll put in Steve Swordfish, and he's a swordfish, he's male. And the reason I know I didn't refresh it is because it already had male checked. So let me hit submit and see what happens. And that works. So that's what we want. Steve Swordfish, he's a swordfish and he's a male. Now, we'd like to have a heading above this too. We don't have any heading here, so that would look a little nicer. So we're going to do that, and we're going to style this a little bit. But eventually what we're going to do is we're going to take this information, put it into our database. So we can add it to our database, so we can add elements into our database or add records to our database right from a web page. That's the whole power of the web and working with web-based databases. So that works. So if we go back here, I'm going to put a heading above here. Now I'm going to copy this whole echo statement, and I'm going to put it in front of it. So you'll have 2 here. And you might say, well, what's going on here? And what we're going to do here is do something called a TH. Now let's go back here. Let's just check this out. And we'll go back to HTML tables. Let's look at tables a second, because they have something called a header. And let's look at this thing here. Let's look at a table and try it yourself. These things here, this is what we want. We want headers. And let's see how they identify headers. They identify headers with a TH tag. See that first name, last name, age? These are headers, and they make them automatically bold. So what we actually want to do is we want to put headings above them, and they're not going to have variables. They're just going to say first name, last name. So we're going to use these TH tags, and they are going to be in a separate row, so we have to put a separate row. So if we go back here, we are going to have a row, and so we're going to keep our row thing, except these things are going to be TH. They're all going to be TH for table header, not table data. Table header, and there's going to be 4 cells, and these all have to be TH as well. So they're going to be closing TH, and we're not going to have variables here. Now, you could put this all in one tag, or you can just put something in quotes here. So I'm just going to put in quotes, and I'm just going to put first like that, and then I'll put last, because remember, this is just text. We don't need variables. And you could type the word and then put quotes after. You could highlight it and then put the quotes after. So I think that'll work. I think you could still concatenate HTML tags like that, or you can put them all in the tag itself, but it's probably easier to do just what we're doing. So this is going to make another row above this row, and it's going to put headers above them. And there's 4 of them, just like there's 4 cells. Now, we didn't really adjust the size of this yet. We didn't adjust any spacing or anything like that yet. So we may want to do that at some point. We may want to make our table a little bigger. One thing I could do here is just under table, I could say width, and I could put something like maybe 60% of the entire page. I'll put a semicolon here. I'll see how that looks. So that means our table will be spread out a little bit more. And let me save this. And it actually did that. Now we're going to have to fix that because it's centering these things. So I think we're going to have to align them left. I think by default, headers get aligned centered. So we're going to have to align them to the left. So I'll have to see how I can do that. Maybe we can do a TR here. So I'll target TR. Now if it's an HTML element, you just have to put TR. You don't have to give it like a class name or anything. So I'm going to put a separate style here for TR, and I'm going to say text align, and I'll put left and see if that works. And then also we might want to change our whole font to the whole table. You might want to do something like this and just put font family. Matter of fact, I'm going to go back to my index page and go up here, and I'll just copy this whole font family thing. That way I'll use this whole font family. And then I'll go back to my display page, and then I'll just paste it here. That way everything in the table should get kind of a sans serif. So I'll do that and see how that looks. And if not, we can just do it for the table header or something. Now remember, this is, I'm sorry, I put TR. This should be TH. So this is the table header. We're targeting this thing. So these things are aligned left. So we'll see if that does that. If it aligns it to the left for us, that should work, but we don't know. So we're going to refresh that. Actually, what we should do, actually it's working, but I should go back and put something else in again. So I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to refresh this, and I'll put like Freddy Fish. It's not very inventive, but I'll just put Freddy Fish right now, and he's a fish. And or I'll put Francine, and I'll put female, and I'll submit. And now I have Francine, fish, species fish, and you can see this is 60% of the page, so that's why it's spreading it out a little bit more. And you can target how wide the cells are as well, but for now that works okay, because eventually what we're going to do is display all our results here. But right now we're just entering things into our database, and we're not actually entering them into our database yet. We're just displaying them on a page. So we're taking a baby step here before we go into our database. But if we could display it here, it seems to be working okay, because that means PHP is working. It's taking the information from our input form and it's displaying it here. So everything's working so far. And we did a little CSS here. Now this is in our display page. We're aligning our headers to the left so it lines up nice. We changed our font. We changed the width of the table a little bit. And basically we have 2 echo statements. And notice each echo statement should have a semicolon at the end, and they should have these little dots concatenating them. So there's a TR, an opening TR, closing TR, opening TH, closing TH, same thing here, same thing here, same thing here. And then there's another echo statement, and the echo statement ends with a semicolon. And then we have a second echo statement, and it has an opening TR, closing TR. And because nothing's ending here with a semicolon, we're using these dots to concatenate. That kind of means it's kind of continuing. Whereas a period usually ends things. Here a dot is actually continuing. So we have this tag, and then it's continuing, and then there's a TD. So that just means it's continuing. That's why we have the dots over here too. And then it ends here. So we have basically 2 rows. A row with a heading, and then a row with our data that we're getting. Our data we're getting from variables that actually represent the post method that's pulling things from our form. So everything's working so far. And this is working so far. So, and it says will not be added to the database yet. So we're not adding anything to our database, but we will. And that's what we're going to do in our next exercise. But we want to make sure that this works first, that we kind of have this process, because there's a lot of different parts here. Now we have 2 pages. We have an input page. Our index.html has our input form, and that has all this. And we didn't even do JavaScript yet. We can put JavaScript in and do validation to make sure that people fill out the form, because if they don't fill out things, it's not going to work right. So we can put little kind of error messages and say, hey, you have to fill out the first name or last name or species, and you have to choose male, female, or other. And that we can do with JavaScript. So that's a whole separate little section there with the JavaScript, almost opening up a whole other language. So far we had SQL, we had PHP, we had HTML, we had CSS, and we're going to do JavaScript. So that'll be our 5th language that we'll be working with. And again, our display PHP is the one that actually displays everything just in a table. So it's really mostly HTML, but it has a little PHP at the beginning that kind of sets up the variables in PHP code. And then we have our HTML, and then we have our form, and so on. And notice that we have PHP at the top, and then we have HTML here, and that's okay. We can do that because it is a PHP file. And then in here we have a table, and this is where we're putting our rows and our cells in the table. And one thing just to point out, that when we have this here, when PHP makes this page, it's making it dynamically. That means if I inspect this, if I go in here and say inspect, it's actually writing HTML. So here's what got created. It created this, here's the headings, you could see this here. I just went to inspect, and it made this kind of table tag, and it made this T-body tag. That I didn't make that, but it made that. And this is basically dynamic HTML is what's happening here. It's being created on the fly. And here's the heading. Here's all the HTML that was generated by PHP. And then here are the TD tags that were generated by PHP. So that's what we created by this PHP page. So there was nothing there, and then it got created on the fly, and the PHP processor is what has to do that. That's why you can't just do it locally on your computer at home. You have to have some kind of PHP processor working. We're using Gorm, which is an online version of it. You can use something called AMPS or MAMP and WAMP and things like that. Or you could, work with GoDaddy or do it live online somewhere, but it has to have a PHP processor to be able to do this. And that's what we just did. So that's why we had to have our Apache web server running in order to do that, or else we'd get connection refused. So that's all you have to do for ex11. And that's the end of part 3. Just make sure you save this. So I'm going to make sure I save my display PHP and close that up. As long as it's working, as long as you're getting one of these things to show up, that's fine. Now just remember that you have to refresh things and you have to save them. So as long as that's working, that's good. And then this page, as long as that's working, we're not going to do anything else with the JavaScript yet. You could close that up, make sure that's saved with an X. And then that's all you have to do. Just put a comment in ex11 that you have it finished. And obviously you should do ex10 first. But I will put in an ex11 folder for you so that you can work with this. So you can close this up, and you don't have to do anything down here. You don't have to exit out of this or anything. All that you have to do is just close your container. And then you could sign out if you want, which will take you back to this page. And then if you want to sign out, you're done. So then just put your comment in your ex11 portion under coursework. And that's part 3 of our ex11 SpongeBob input.